Hello, this is going to be a tutorial on the Uplift out of bounds. So first thing that I'm going to talk about here is just around regards to the coordinates. So to activate the coordinates on console or PC, you need to have a controller plugged in. I'll put in the description the button combination when on the default button layout to activate the coordinates. A little quirk around the coordinates is that there's a slight little bug when you're on a lowered crosshair as opposed to centered crosshair. So I'm on lowered crosshair, and if I look straight up, you can see that on the second to last number, which signifies my vertical look angle, I can actually go past 90 degrees on the PanCam coordinates. And you see that the number next to it that says 165, which is my horizontal angle, that actually flips 180 degrees and goes to the other side because the game thinks that I'm looking in this direction. So when you see me line up, I'm going to be using a number that's in the 340s to set up my Nade setup. But if you're playing centered, you just want to subtract 180 degrees from that to get the angle that you want to use. Alright, so start a level, you want to move your way towards the hog. I generally like to shoot a chopper at the start of the mission. It's not required, it's just you've got time to shoot a chopper, and they can just be a little annoying. So jump here, charge up a shot, aim for the chopper. Well, I wait till I get about here, and then I charge the second shot. That allows me to shoot the brute and get to the hog. And we shoot the brute late because, as you see here, the brute's walked forward and has delivered the brute shot to us sooner than if we shoot the brute earlier. I'm going to try and show a little quirk around weapon pickup here. So if I park on top of this brute shot here, the prompt to get the brute shot is blocked by the enter vehicle button. But if I turn around away from the vehicle, I'm able to get that prompt. So if you ever go to pick up the brute shot and you accidentally drive on top of it, just look away and you can collect the brute shot. We're going to hop in. If you pick up the brute shot over here, it might be better for you to take a pathing between these rocks and go left side. Otherwise you turn around the right side of this section here. Angle to the left, so you curve right onto this rock here, and then we're going to head up this ramp here. This ramp's a little bit finicky. You're going to get stuck at some point and not going to be able to get over the edge. If you turn your vehicle to the right, you'll see that the tires angle to the right and they actually grip on that left side rock face there, and they allow you to get over the edge. Get in as far as you can. Now it's important to get the hog relatively far in, and sometimes the hog just won't get in quite as far, or when you get out it's going to slide back. To help encourage the hog to go as far as possible, if you hold the power slide button and then let go, you'll notice that inch forward a bit. So you can use that just to inch your way further and further forward in. You don't want to be as far as possible in, but you want to be quite far in before you get out of the hog. As you can see here, Wraiths can be kind of annoying, and they sometimes you want to run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to revert and I'm going to get back to this point here once this Wraith has de-aggroed.
Watch that chopper. Hit it head on and it'll tear us to pieces.
So just going to show the alternative pathing here. Hopefully the Wraith isn't tracking me this time. Go up, grip the left side of the rock, get the hog in, using the power slide just to inch a bit further forward, and we're in. So a way to sort of tell roughly how far the hog should be is if you press up against this front sort of side of it, the number on the top left, that first coordinate, is the coordinate along this axis.
Affirmative.
And you want that to be roughly around 3.5. So the hog's in a roughly good spot. Whatever number it is, you want to be around 0.3 back from the hog. So typically you get the hog around 3.5, you want to stand around 3.8. I'll put coordinates in the description that are what I try to aim for. They're not precise, and you can be slightly off to still get a launch that works. It's just sort of the numbers that I aim to get. So this is roughly to know if you got the hog in a good spot. Sometimes it might be further back, sometimes it might be further forward. If you're in an attempt, just go for it, see what happens, but this is what you're aiming for. I'm going to go over my setup. So I stand about here. So these are the coordinates I use. I'll put them in the description. And just remember, if you're using centered, you want to subtract 180 from that fourth number across, which is the horizontal look angle, just because on lowered, I go past 90 degrees and I get a plus 180 rotation angle there. Rotation angle could maybe be as high as 162 or 342, and as low as 340.7 or 160.7. These coordinates aren't necessarily the best. There might be developments in the future with slightly better setups, but this is what I go with for now. So now for nade throws, what you would like to do is jump and then throw, sort of at the peak of the jump, and then spam your second nade as quickly as possible. And you want to make sure you have the SMG out, because the nade timing is different when you have the brute shot out as opposed to the SMG. So jump, throw, throw. And this is roughly what it should look like when the hog gets hit by 2 nades. So jump, throw, throw. So it should look something similar to that. I don't know if this is perfect, but this is roughly what you get. So if you're trying your own lineup, and maybe you don't have coordinates because you don't have access to a controller, you can try matching my visual lineup. So you can look at the UI and how it intersects with the buildings, or you can look at the antenna that's coming off the building and try and visually line up with this. And I'm working off 95 FOV with a lower crosshair. So what I recommend you do is you set your FOV to 95, try and match this pixel perfectly, change your FOV to whatever FOV you use, and then take a screenshot of that or just work off that and try and memorize and see what parts of the UI that you could use to line up with the building to help you get this position here. I'll look around a little bit so you can see what other things you might be able to line up with. Cool. So once again, those 2 frags, something like this. Alright, so now the third frag, you want to throw quite late. It wants to hit the ground basically when the first nade hits the ground. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get it to bounce off the ground into this underside of the hog and land somewhere in the front. You don't want it to get lost underneath the hog like that, and you don't want it to sort of bounce off the front of the hog back at you. So that might be a little bit too far forward. You want to try and get it just underneath the front, sort of alongside where this tire is. This sort of area. Again, not super scientific. There could be some crazy variation that still gets you a launch, but this is what you're aiming for. So trying to throw it off the ground here. You notice there's this little dark line. I sort of try to use that as a reference as to where I throw the nade, somewhere about there, and hope that you get a bounce where it lands underneath the hog. The timing for the third nade, again, I don't have a super scientific setup for this, but this is roughly what I use. Is I think about the time it takes between the first and second nade. So 1, 2, and then I count out 3, 4, and after number 4 is when I throw. You don't want to be on 4. You want to be a bit after 4. Alternatively, the timing is roughly this hits the ground when that hits the first nade hits the ground. Last thing I forgot is that you do want to jump onto the hog as you're throwing the nade, and you want to get onto the hog before the nades detonate, and then you want to brute shot after the nades detonate, but before this one does. So after the bombs at the back, the nades at the back detonate, but before the one at the front, and you want to brute shot near the front. So I sort of aim to the right side of this tire here, close to the tire, near the front. Don't want to do too far back. It's difficult to get right in front. So you generally aim about there, after the back nades explode before the first one, or as the first one explodes. If you have custom checkpoints available, you can get a custom checkpoint in between the second and third nade, and then you can just practice throwing the third nade and the timing for that. The first two nades should be relatively consistent, so that might look something like this. So now I'm just practicing how to throw the third nade. And then once you get somewhat comfortable with this movement, you can double revert and practice from the start.
Time for medicine! Take it, baby!
Oh, that happens. So let's say I'm pretty confident with that now. I can double revert and just practice from here. So what I've done here is just a small montage of various launch attempts that worked out, and you can try and see what are the key characteristics to making this launch work. So one thing I wanted to mention is that if you don't have access to custom checkpoints, the way to practice this launch is if you drive relatively far forward here, you can trigger a checkpoint, and you can actually carry this checkpoint to about here. So I'm going to try and do that now.
Trooper, over here, help us secure this vehicle.
Let the brute walk forward. Drive over to the brute.
Ready.
Drive a little bit forward. Try and still be in combat. And once we get away from the enemies, we should get the checkpoint here. And that's probably the best checkpoint you can get for practicing this launch. Wouldn't be useful for attempts, because the checkpoint, reverting to the checkpoint would be too slow.
Thanks for the assist, Trooper.
Alright, so let's say you managed to get out of bounds. We're going to talk a little bit about the driving here. So unfortunately the mission's not quite super easy from here on out. There's a bit of annoyance that you need to drop down into the sea here, but if you go too fast you fall timer and die. So what we need to do is we need to find a way to lose speed and slowly fall off the edge. So if we go super slowly, fall off, we'll survive. But we want to try and go fast, so a method for this is to drive along roughly at this angle here, and once you get off this edge, let go of forward, hold the power slide button, and you should slow down and bounce off the edge. And ideally, if you get the right angle, you'll land wheels down. So driving, 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 hold the power slide, let go of forward, bounce, wheels down. So I'll just try that a couple times just to see if we can get it somewhat consistent. One more time. Power slide, bounce, and we survived. So then we're going to drive to the end. Go up this ramp, and again the mission's not quite over yet, still one little tricky part to go. So what I like to do here is, so sort of swing around this way, and we're going to try and aim our right tyre to go over this little lip here, this edge here. If you try and go too far left, you're going to bonk into here and fly off the edge. So we're going to swing around here and try and aim our right tyre over the edge. Swing around the outside, right tyre over the edge. You can also sort of go a bit more of narrower, which I'm not super practiced at, which might be slightly faster, but is also slightly more difficult. This might not work. Or just. Cool. Otherwise, swing around, aim for that right tyre over the edge. So in terms of driving off, you don't want to go too low, otherwise you'll miss the intermission trigger. You want to aim a little bit higher, about halfway between the top and the bottom, sort of over this black line. So somewhere about the middle, over the edge here, should hit the trigger. If you want to be more safe, just aim higher. That's the edge here. Alright, and that should cover most of the key parts about the uplift out of bounds.